Let's get started. So we're going to talk about the band descriptors. We're going to talk about the question types. We're going to go through step-by-step sample answers, and we're going to look at band 7 specifically because this is what the majority of students are aiming for. So it would be useful to look at band 9, and we'll look at a little example at the end, but we were focusing on band 7 specifically because this is what the majority of students are aiming for. So we'll look at this. Then we're going to look at paraphrasing because this is something that students really struggle with, is putting answers into their own words, putting responses in different ways, phrasing them differently. And then we'll look at writing a conclusion as well, because this is another area of difficulty. So Claudia, I'll hand it over to you. Let's have a quick look at the band descriptors, and we're focusing on bands 5 to 8. What is important, or what should we note here?
Yes, so as we know, each band is different. So if we look at number 5, we can see under task achievement, it says addresses the task only partially. And the reason that I'm even mentioning this is because Daniel and I always talk about task achievement. And so what is that? That's answering the question and answering it well and answering it fully. Now, you'll see with some of the example questions that we show you, it's one question, but there's 3 questions within that one question. And so it's really important that students address those 3 things in the question. I'm not saying there'll be 3 things to address every time. I'm just saying there could be multiple things that they have to address. So that's really important with task achievement. And then with cohesion, does it make sense? Logically, can the student use linking words in a way that is logical? When I read the essay, do I know where it's going, or is it all over the place? Vocabulary, do they use a range of vocabulary? Do they use uncommon vocabulary? Now, this doesn't refer to fancy words, as I like to say, but it refers to topic-based vocabulary. When we say uncommon, we're talking about topic-based. So if it's about marketing, then do they use words related to marketing? And then Daniel, do you want to take the last one maybe?
Oh, this one's tricky. Yeah. So the grammar accuracy, this is generally the most difficult part to work with the student on, because we see things like different structures. So what do we mean is different sentence types: simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences. Honestly, you can get by at a band 7 level with, a variety of complex structures. So can I write, simple sentences well, a couple of complex sentences, maybe one compound in there as well. So thinking about that produces frequent error-free sentences. This is the key from a 5 or a 6 to a 7. The vast majority don't have errors or mistakes. There might be a few sentences in there, 4 or 5 errors in there. As long as it's not repetitive and all focused in the same place and they're little things, then we can still achieve a 7. Good control of grammar and punctuation, but might make a few errors. So again, students are really hyper-focused on perfection. Everything has to be perfect. Well, the harder they try and the more they complicate it, the more mistakes and errors they make, which pulls this down. But what we can do is, and what we'll go through with you guys today, is looking at each section, breaking it down and realizing, okay, to get a 7, it's not easy. It takes work, it takes time, but it can be done by just being clear, organized, paraphrasing, summarizing, writing a strong conclusion, and making sure the sentences are structured in a simple way and they develop as well. Because it does mention here central topic, and you're developing, you're going through and you're building upon. So instead of having it all over the place, like Claudia said, we have short introduction, we look at one side, we look at the other side, and then we give a conclusion at the end. So if you have any more questions about the band descriptors, let us know, because I'm aware this is a tricky part of the test, but we'll try to break it down for you as we go through the different questions. So let's break down part 2. We'll talk about a structure, a 4-paragraph structure. Generally, what we teach is 4 paragraphs. Some students might do 3, some might do 5. There isn't a perfect way to do this. Just from my experience as an examiner, I know that if I look at a Again, paragraphs might be misleading, but I mean 4 sections, 4 parts, and it's clear and it's logical and it's developed and it makes sense. That's a really easy way for me to assess a score quickly and easily. So again, it's all about giving the examiner what they need as well. Linking and connecting, this is really key. So we'll look at how students link and connect words. It's not that complex. Firstly, secondly, thirdly, lastly, okay. To begin with, next, following on, etc. These kinds of words. And then persuasive language. So again, we're talking about lexical resource. It doesn't mean fancy words like Claudia said. It means the right words for the right task and using topic specific vocabulary to talk about the right thing. Because we see a lot of unnatural or a lot of, words, phrases that don't really fit with what we need. So it's about having the right language for the right task. So first one is, the different question types. So the first one here is opinion essays. We're pretty familiar with these. These are the ones that require you to give your opinion on a topic and support it with examples and arguments. So what's your opinion on this? What do you think about this? What's your opinion? So we'll ask that quite explicitly. Then we have discussion essays. This is where you're given, discuss a given topic from different viewpoints. Some people say this, other people say this, older people, younger people, this country, another country, in the past and now. So these are common ones that will be discussed. And the student essentially has to present advantages and disadvantages. So again, how do they do that in a clear way? In 4-paragraph structure, we'll talk about advantages and disadvantages themselves. So what are the advantages of X versus the disadvantages of X? Or what are the advantages of this and disadvantages of that? So, and give an opinion as well. Problem solution, easier. This is the problem. How would you solve it? Different kinds of questions we'll look at there. And then there's a 2-part question essay as well, which might ask you to answer 2 questions in one. So that's a bit more complex and a little bit more unusual, but we will look at that one and we'll talk about that as well. All right, Claudia, the opinion essay, let's get started with this. And this is a model answer of 250 words exactly. So what stands out? What's important? What do you need to look at in this one?
Yeah, so firstly, we need to look out for paraphrasing. Have they paraphrased the question in their introduction? And as we can see, they haven't. So the question is, some people believe that technology has made our lives too complex. Do you agree or disagree? And they've written in their introduction, some people believe that technology has made our lives too complex, but I disagree. So they have, there's no paraphrasing at all. All they needed to do was paraphrase and they would have boosted their score really simply. So yeah, that's the first thing I look at. The second thing is it well balanced? Logically, okay, so we have 4 body paragraphs. That's great. Is it well balanced? Because we don't want an imbalance. We don't want to lean on one side more than we do the other. Even if we agree with that side, we want to fully develop both sides. So I think it's pretty balanced. I mean, the first body paragraph is a little more, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the second one is not well developed. And then in the band descriptors, it says you need to present and then support. So now I start looking for, okay, in the first body paragraph, it says to begin with, great linking word, technology has made our lives easier, for example. So they've started adding their examples. So they've made a statement and they're supporting it. Do we think they could have developed that a little bit more? So instead of just saying, one statement and going straight into the example, could they have elaborated a little bit more? Probably. I mean, just saying to begin with, technology has made our lives easier. They could have probably elaborated more, but it's not a big deal. And then, just looking at the vocabulary, I do see a lot of repetition. Now, with the word social media, how many times can you change that word? Not many. You could say social platform, you could say modern technology. I mean, how could you paraphrase that? That's the question, but I do see a lot of repetition. What do you think, Daniel?
Yes, it is a band 7. So again, you might look at it and think, wow, this is amazing. In terms of the balance, the two body paragraphs in the middle, maybe they're not exactly balanced, which is again, it's not a huge issue at a band 7 level. Again, we can go through and we can see the structure here. So to begin with, for example, an explanation, and then it goes into a little bit more. Again, the point, the example, the explanation. So we can see a clear structure that's taking place throughout the response. Again, could have been improved, but at band 7, this is fine, and this is a really clear, structured response. And then let's look at the conclusion. Again, in conclusion, while some people may believe that technology has made our lives too complex, so it's paraphrased like slightly, but starting here into the introduction to the conclusion, there's very little difference between them. You don't have to radically change the whole thing, but let's at least try to show that we've understood and we're able to rephrase or reframe the task. And then I believe that it's made our lives easier, more convenient, and more enjoyable. Okay, well, again, I believe. So it's a little bit confusing because they've said, I believe. Well, they're giving two opinions. Are they the same opinion? I'm not sure. So again, it's repeated a little, but overall, I understand that it's clear. Most of it makes sense. Most of it is, easy to follow. There's a little bit of here that's a little bit unclear, a little bit of repetition, like we said, a little bit of imbalance, but overall a 7 would be about right for this one. So that's the opinion. And again, as you're going through this, if you have any questions, just feel free to comment in the chat, and we'll try to address any questions as they come up. Next is the discussion question. So the question here is about, some people believe that universities should focus on preparing students for employment, while others think they should focus on academic study. Discuss both sides and give your opinion. So again, we're picking out the keywords here: employment, academic study. Okay, so a student can identify the keywords. That's what we should try to teach them to do, is to identify the keywords and then use that to structure their response. So they have employment, and then if I look here, I see employment. Academic study, I look here, academic study. Fantastic. So I can clearly see that they followed a clear structure. Discuss both sides, okay, on the one hand, on the other hand. Okay, I see contrast and comparison, so that's fantastic as well. So this looks good on the surface, and it's very balanced as well. Why is it only a 7 though? Let's find out. 260 words, again, task achievement, right on the money. The role of universities has been a topic of debate in recent years, with some believing that universities should focus on preparing students for, hold on a second. Again, it's just lifted directly from the question. In my opinion, universities should strike a balance between the two. That's fine. The introduction is pretty effective. Again, it's just lifted, so we might need to be a bit more creative with this and just try to paraphrase it. And then we go into the first body paragraph. On the one hand, there are valid arguments. Okay, well, what are they? And then again, they've expanded upon this. With the job market becoming competitive, students need to develop skills and knowledge required to succeed in their chosen careers. This means that, okay, good. So I can see some progression here. It's a little bit vague. It could be a little bit more direct, but it's fairly clear. On the other hand, okay, I see a clear shift, a development. Universities should not neglect the importance of academic study. Okay, after all, typo. So again, small grammatical error here. The primary purpose of universities is to provide students with a high quality education that prepares them for a lifetime of learning and personal growth. Wow. Okay, so we've got a complex sentence here. Academic study helps to helps to develop critical thinking skills, to become more knowledgeable about the world around them, and to develop a love of learning that will stay with them for the rest of their lives. So even though the sentences are quite complex, the language isn't really that, incredible, or it's not anything unique that we don't generally see. So this is why the language is showing a wide range. It's well balanced. In my view, universities should strike a balance between these two priorities. Okay, so they're going back to the question. Going back to their opinion here. They should offer courses that are relevant and provide opportunities for practical experience, but they should also ensure that their students receive a solid foundation in academic study. Okay. A little bit repetitive. This will help students succeed in their chosen careers while also providing them with the knowledge and skills they need to make a positive contribution to society. So again, they've repeated themselves a little bit here instead of just paraphrasing. But again, overall, it looks like a good response to me. What could make this better though, Claudia? What could bring this up to maybe an 8 or even a 9?
Yeah, so like you say, the vocabulary that they've used is good. But again, if we could just paraphrase more and repeat less, because that is in the band descriptors, it says repetition, do students repeat? And so that's actually quite a big deal. And there is a lot of repetition here. But like you say, the words that they've used, for example, strike a balance in the conclusion, that's amazing. Strike a balance, a lifetime of learning, high quality education. So they've used a collocation there as well. I do want to point out that, as you can see, the sentences are not every sentence is complex.
Right.
So if you look at the first body paragraph, that sentence is a simple sentence, right? So it doesn't have to, because students think, well, I can never use a simple sentence. No, you can, a variety of sentences, simple, compound, complex. So yeah, just let your students know that it's okay to use simple sentences as long as that's not all they're using. Yeah, and I do want to say, in terms of the introduction, you can break it down for your student in 3 sentences. So you can tell them, okay, first sentence is like a general statement about the topic, almost like a background sentence about the topic. Second sentence is paraphrasing. So if you can make that clear for them, second sentence, paraphrase the question in that sentence. And then your third sentence is basically your thesis. It's like, what am I going to tell the person reading this? So yeah, just keeping it really simple. You have your 3 sentences, 2 body paragraphs, and then your conclusion. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, good points. And again, this is good. Could be a little bit better. Just remember the difference between a band 5 to band 6 to band 7 is quite big. There's big jumps between them, but band 7 to band 8, band 9, there's not really that big a jump between them. But again, it doesn't have to be that complex. This is perfect for a band 7, which is what we're focusing on. All right, advantages and disadvantages, Claudia. How should we approach this one? Again, another band 7, 261 words.
Yeah. So the important thing to remember here is, for every disadvantage or for every advantage, you need a disadvantage. Same with the problem solution essay. For every problem, you need a solution. It's not okay for students to write 2 advantages and then 1 disadvantage. And I think that's the difference between an IELTS essay and just a normal academic essay, is that they do look at little things like that, and it means something, it matters. Another thing to remember is, in the band descriptors, they talk about mechanical devices. So what is that? It's the linking words that students use in academic essays all the time, like nowadays, even additionally. So it's just, as an IELTS teacher, what makes you different to an academic writing teacher is you want to stay away from those mechanical linking words. You want to teach them something that is different. So yeah, looking at this, I can see that they have their advantage, they have their disadvantage. It's well balanced. Like, you can just look at this and say, wow, that's a really well balanced essay. They've used some good linking words. There's structure, there's logic, there's flow. Again, no paraphrasing, and I guess that's why it's a 7, because I do not see paraphrasing. No, they've copied the question directly. Yeah, that's what I would say about this one.
And a kind of a layout which you can follow. So again, we've talked about the introduction on the one hand, and then it's giving more information, examples, explanation additionally. So you can see that development, you can see that transition throughout. Task achievement's good because it's on terms of word count, it's perfect. It's developing, it's expanding, it's supporting throughout as well. The vocabulary could be better. The grammar, again, is fine. So again, a 7. It might even be an 8 in one area in terms of the grammar, because it has a range of sentences. But overall it would still be a 7. Definitely might be a little bit higher, like a high 7, but it's still going to be a 7 in terms of that. Okay, wonderful. Problem solution. This one is about 292 words. Now, one thing to note about word count is try not to go above 300 as an absolute maximum, because what's going to happen is if you go above 300 in the problem solution here, it's going to start to affect task achievement. It's going to bring down task achievement, because that's when you lose that tight structured response and you go off track. You maybe go into too much detail on one, you start to lose the balance. Even though this is a little bit longer, you can still see these 2 body paragraphs are fairly well balanced, a short introduction and a slightly longer conclusion, but that's okay. So the question is talking about traffic congestion being a major problem. What are the causes and solutions? What can we do to address this? So traffic congestion is a major problem in many cities. Okay, lift it again. This is why it's a 7. This is what we see all the time. There are several causes of this problem, okay, including, okay, great, we've got some ideas. Growing population, an increase in number of cars on the road, and inadequate infrastructure. So as an examiner, I would expect to see these points referred to later on in the paragraphs below. So let's see. However, there are also several solutions that can be implemented. Okay, several. I always teach my students that we start off with a couple for 2, a few for 3 or 4, maybe even 5, several for 6, 7. So again, it's not a hard and fast rule. It can be. I just try to teach them that rule of thumb to help them remember quantities. So let's see how many points they do put in, but that's me being very nitpicky. So one of the main causes is growing population. Okay, fantastic. The first point here is growing population, good task achievement. And okay, which yeah, as cities become more populated, more people are driving cars, which leads to more traffic on the road. Perfect. So they've addressed that really well. Another cause is the increase of number of cars on the road. Second point. Okay, I haven't paraphrased it though. This is the problem. This is what we keep mentioning. With more people owning cars than ever before, there's simply not enough space on the roads to accommodate all of them. Not enough space. Could that be infrastructure? Maybe. So finally, inadequate infrastructure is another cause. Okay. Many cities have outdated road systems that are not designed. Okay, fantastic. So they've just put point, and then they've explained it, point, explained it, point, explained it. So that's the structure that they followed, which works well, and clearly follows what they've put in the introduction. Now, to address this, there's some solutions, several solutions. Okay, let's see. One solution is to encourage the use of public transportation. Okay, so they've put their idea. This can be done by, and they've actually given an example. Another solution is carpooling programs, which encourage people to share rides and reduce number of cars on the road. Additionally, cities can invest in infrastructure improvements. Okay, so they actually kept it really tight, and they've connected it back to what they've said in the introduction, which is fantastic. In conclusion, traffic congestion is a major problem, but there are several solutions that can be implemented by encouraging the use of public transportation, implementing carpool programs, and investing. Okay, they've just repeated again. Cities can reduce the amount of traffic on the roads. So again, it's a good, like if we're looking at the band descriptors, task achievement is good. They've referred to, they have kind of, gone back and referred to the question throughout. Have they developed it? Not really. They've just said point, example, point, example, point, example. And they might need to explain a bit more for some of them, which they haven't really done all that much. The cohesion is great. 4 well-developed paragraphs. This might even be an 8 in that section, because they've done that really well. In terms of the lexical resource, I don't see much paraphrasing. I see a lot of repetition. I see a lot of the same ideas just repeated, which is okay at a 7. But if you want to go above that, we'd have to paraphrase a little bit more. And then the structures, again, simple sentence, compound sentence, simple sentence, so it's very formulaic. This is okay for a 7, but if we ever want to go above that, we're going to have to be a bit more flexible. But again, this is good to teach. This is good to show at a band 7 level how to do it and how to structure it and how to organize it. Claudia, anything else on your side to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something about the word count. So yeah, like we've mentioned before, the reason why we keep saying, stick to 250 to 290 and try not to go over that is because students will sometimes repeat the same idea or the same thing in multiple ways. So they end up going in circles. And so that's why a good way to avoid that is to tell them, don't go over 290. So I just wanted to add that. And then in terms of this essay, I like the fact that they've said one solution is instead of firstly. So they're staying away from those, like I said, mechanical linking words. And then another solution is, another reason is, these are linking words that we should be teaching them. So instead of firstly, secondly, thirdly.
Count words, but if they structure it well and structure it clearly, then it should be easy to stay within that. They should do it without even realizing. All right, two-part essay question. This is a bit more tricky. We've got a 260-word model, band 7 response here, Claudia. What do we need to think about and consider with this type of question?
Yeah, so firstly, if we look at the actual question, it says some people believe that technology has made our lives easier, while others think that it has made our lives more complicated. Discuss both views and give your opinion. So it's really important that they discuss both views in a balanced way. And then here they are asked for their opinion. So they need to give their opinion. And then if we look at what are they being asked, well, what do they need to address? Some people believe that technology has made our lives easier. They need to address that. While others think that it has made our lives more complicated, they need to address that too. And then, of course, they need to give their opinion. So that's really important because sometimes a student will not give their opinion, or they discuss one side, like I've said, a little bit too much, or they just don't discuss one side at all. But I do want to mention, like, if we go to the body paragraphs, a nice way to teach your students is to tell them, okay, of course, let's have a topic sentence. So your first sentence can be a topic sentence, and it can be a simple sentence, like I've said, really simple, not complicated. And then after that, your supporting sentence can be a little bit more complex. Then after that, you could even have like a concluding sentence to kind of summarize what you've just said. Once again, that's 3 sentences in a body paragraph. Not that complicated. And a band 7, I mean, I know we're speaking about a band 7, like, they could improve. There's a lot of repetition, but actually a band 7 is really high in IELTS. If your student gets a band 7, that's pretty amazing. Most students are, they really want to get that, and they struggle to get that. So I guess my point is, if you look at this and you look at all the repetition, and you look at the sentences used, a band 7 is actually not that difficult to achieve.
Yeah, I agree. And this is what we keep saying, students come to us, they're like, okay, here's what I can do. Here's my writing. And we look at the writing and we're like, it's all over the place because you're trying to hit a band 9 when you're at a band 5 right now. You're not magically going to jump up all those levels because you don't have the structure, you don't have the organization, the skills, etc. So again, when you're working with students, 4 sections, 4 paragraphs, simple, clear, easy to follow. I go through this. Here's the question. Okay. And there's a little bit of paraphrasing here as well. On the one hand, okay, they've explained it and they've given an extra point. So there isn't, a lot of linking language, but it's clear. On the other hand, okay, and then we've got another point here. Additionally, finally. So it's clear. It's very clear. In my opinion, technology is neither inherently good nor bad. Fantastic. That's a great vocabulary word that shows me that they've understood this topic, because we can only use inherently for looking at certain issues. It's simply a tool that can be used by both positive and negative purposes. So they've used one interesting, unique word only that I can see here that most people maybe wouldn't know, and they've used it properly in context. So this is the difference. What happens is a lot of students try to jam in these kinds of words, and that just really pulls their score down. So it's up to individuals to use technology responsibly and be aware of its potential negative effects. By doing so, we can ensure that technology is a force for good in our lives and in the world. So really nice answer. So I have a question here from Stacy. Would you possibly encourage creativity, such as starting the essay with a question or another technique, or do you encourage them to stick to the formula? What would you say, Claudia?
It depends on your student's level.
Mhm.
If they can be creative, I mean, a lot of this is creativity because they have to generate ideas anyway. So I think for me, I try and make it as technical as possible, just so that it's safer and
Yes.
less risky, because they're struggling to generate the ideas, they're struggling to, stick to the grammar. So I just try and give them a format that they can work with. I try and make it as simple as possible and as technical as possible. Starting a paragraph with a question. Yeah, that's a good question. Daniel, what do you think?
Like you've said, why complicate it when that's not what we're being asked to do? The band descriptors don't ask about creativity or, using different techniques in terms of writing. Like these are great for essay writing and for academic, like, university style or college style papers. Fantastic. Yeah, let's have a hook. Again, if they're at this level, they're probably not that skilled in terms of doing this. So I would say just really keep it simple, look at the question, pick out the keywords, frame it in your own way, put them into your own words. That is all I would say. Because again, if we're trying to do more than we need to, that could potentially make it more difficult to be successful. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. Good question. Keep them coming if you have any other questions. All right. And actually, this ties in really nicely to paraphrasing. If we can paraphrase well and paraphrase effectively, this is going to make a huge difference and create a way for students to avoid repeating themselves and just to kind of be skilled, or at least have 5 different ways they can paraphrase. They shouldn't just do one of these or 2 of these. They should try to combine different ones and do them in different ways. But it should help. And I'll show you the band 9 response at the end, where this is actually being done really well. And you can see the difference. So first step, use synonyms. Really simple. Use different words that have the same or very similar meanings. I'm sure we're all aware of what synonyms are. How can we teach synonyms, or how can we get this into practice? Well, what we do is we will do a lesson on a topic, and we'll have some reading based on that. We'll have some listening based on that. We'll have some discussion questions based on that, and we'll pick out some words. We'll pick out some vocabulary. So instead of just one word, social media, then we can change it to, apps, or specific ways to talk about social media. I'm drawing a blank right now. Why is that? But yeah, some other ways to talk about social media. The way that we could do that, if we're talking about computers, we might say laptops, PCs, workstations, that kind of thing. So again, just using different words instead of just saying the same thing over and over again. Online platforms. Thank you, Stacy. Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. So yeah, that's the first step. So when we're going through answers and when we're working on answers with students, when we're working on answers with students, generally, I'll generally give them a question, and we'll break it down. What are the keywords? What do these words mean? How are some other ways you can say them? Okay. And then when we're planning a response, then we can start putting them into practice. The next one, change positive to negative or negative to positive. So, most people do this. Well, a few people don't do this. Older people do this. Younger people don't do this. So again, we can try to, change positive to negative and negative to positive. It's an easier way to avoid repetition instead of just repeating it exactly the same. It's showing a little bit of creativity in terms of the vocabulary and language we use. And it's going to also help us to paraphrase effectively. Changing active to passive or passive to active. So the voice, be careful with this one, because this might affect other things like tense. But if you can, again, do a little switch with passive voice, active voice, that can definitely be helpful. So that's one other way we can paraphrase effectively. Different word forms. This is a good one. So instead of just using the noun form, use the verb form, use the adjective form, use the adverb form. Try to use different forms of the same word, so you're not just repeating it over and over again. That was done before. I think it was population and populating. So again, you can easily just change the form there. So that's another way to do this effectively. And then change the order of the information. So instead of just, A, B, C, D, the explanation, the examples, you can definitely flip those around. In the sentence as well, if it's a 2-question response, changing the order of those. Maybe if it's talking about one side, other side, you could also go other side and then one side. So you could also do that as well. So these are easy ways to paraphrase, to put this into different ways or different versions. So they're not just repeating the same things over and over again. So definitely practice this with students, go through different paraphrasing strategies, teach them the paraphrasing strategy so that when they see a question, they can approach it in different ways and they have strategies there to refer to, and they have skills they can refer to as well. Writing a conclusion. So again, we've broken this down to 3 steps. Claudia, how should we write a conclusion?
Yeah, so once again, they need to restate the task or the thesis. They should try and do that in different words though. They shouldn't copy their own words word for word. And that's what we mean by paraphrasing, is that not only will they paraphrase the question, but they'll have to paraphrase their own words. And then number 2, sum up the idea. So the main idea from the body 1 and body 2, this can be in the second sentence. So again, you can do this in 3 sentences. And then number 3, give an overall opinion, prediction, or recommendation. You can give a recommendation. So the thing with the conclusion is, as long as a student is not giving a whole new idea, because that's when they mess up the conclusion. Because it's like, okay, now we have this essay, everything links, all the points link, everything is cohesive, and then all of a sudden we have a brand new idea in the conclusion. So that's one of the biggest mistakes that students make and that they should avoid. But opinion, prediction, or recommendation, they can do that in a way where they're not introducing something brand new.
Nothing new in the conclusion. We're just going to quickly say, okay, this is what I talked about. Here's my main argument from this body and this body, one side, the other side, just quickly what it is again. And then here's my opinion, prediction, or recommendation. That's fine. Is it okay to write in conclusion for the last paragraph? Yes. Clearly signal it. You don't just have to say in conclusion. You could say to sum up, or to conclude. That's fine as well, but keep it simple. Once students have these phrases or chunks that they can just put into place, then they'll feel much more confident and comfortable about approaching. I've been working with a student who's a band 3 in writing, and we took a lot of time to just really work on structure, organization, what words, and we kind of did a little template, and we built some structure and some frameworks, and we went through it. So now, at least when she does a response, she's able to plug in these words and it's very clear. So yeah, keep it really simple, Stacey. That would be my advice for sure.
I think just to add to that,
yes.
I think the reason that Stacey could be asking that is because I did mention the overused linking words. And so you would think that in conclusion is overused, but I would say when it comes to the conclusion, it doesn't matter. The mechanical devices, the mechanical linking words, doesn't matter. You can use that in your conclusion, it's fine. It's more about body 1 and body 2, where it's better to use different linking words.
Right.
But yeah, good question.
It is a good question. Yeah, and sorry, I must have missed that. Definitely, don't use the same linking words over and over and over again, but essentially they're doing one test. They're going to do one writing piece. So as long as they're not repeating the same things in that one response, then it's not a big issue. But again, if they're doing, consistently writing for you and they use some of the same ones, that's okay. Might be a bit boring to read, but as long as it's clear, as long as it's simple, as long as you can understand it, then that's the dream, right? That's what we want to achieve with our students. All right. So here is a band 9. So we'll go back to that question we had at the start. Some people believe technology has made our lives too complex. Do you agree or disagree? Band 9, 274 words. So it's not way over and beyond what we've been looking at. What makes this a band 9 as opposed to a band 7? Let's have a quick look. So some people believe technology has made our lives too complex. Do you agree or disagree? So technology has had a significant impact on our lives in recent years. And there is an ongoing debate about whether it has made our lives too complex. Fantastic. So they have got that chunk, but they've used it and they've used technology. So they're just using keywords now as opposed to the whole thing. And they've put some really effective, powerful language to frame at the beginning. While some argue that technology has made our lives more complicated, not complex, complicated, I believe that it has also provided many benefits that outweigh any negative effects. Okay, so they put effects in here. So this is what we mean by effective paraphrasing. We've used synonyms. We have, changed up some of the word forms as well. So already it's a great start. On the one hand, okay, simple, fine. It is true that technology has introduced new complexities, complexities. There we go, word form. For example, many people now rely heavily on technology for work, communication, entertainment, and this can lead to information overload and increased stress. Again, nothing too, highbrow in terms of the vocabulary. It's simple, I think, but it's very effective. Additionally, okay, again, simple linkers. One hand, for example, additionally, the constant need to upgrade and keep up with latest technology can be overwhelming and time-consuming. Fine. However, it is important to remember that technology has also made many aspects of our lives easier and more efficient. For example, we can now shop online, communicate with friends and family around the world, and access vast amounts of information with just a few clicks. So again, really nice idiomatic language here with just a few clicks. Okay. Furthermore, the negative effects of technology are often the result of overuse or misuse rather than inherent. There's that word again. Problems with technology itself. By using technology responsibly and setting appropriate boundaries, it's possible to mitigate these negative effects and enjoy the benefits that technology has to offer. So already you can see a huge difference. We don't expect our students to be able to do this, and it's not necessarily a good idea to keep showing them band 9 sample answers because it's not achievable or attainable for them. Of course, to have a model and say this is a band 9, but we don't need to be here just so they can see might be useful. But the problem that we have is that if we show band 9 samples to students, they're like, oh, I can use these words. I'm going to use these words. And then they don't come in naturally. They don't fit. And it just loses all, balance, basically. Again, is this balanced? Maybe we've got one sentence too many here, but honestly, this is really well written. And we'll look at the conclusion. We said those 3 points. In conclusion, while it is true that technology has introduced new complexities into our lives, okay, fantastic, I believe that its benefits outweigh any negatives. So they've just restated what they've said here. They haven't exactly repeated. They've used some different ways of doing this. By using technology responsibly and setting appropriate boundaries, we can enjoy the many advantages technology has to offer while minimizing its negative impacts. Okay, so that's just summed up these parts here. And conclusion, the final opinion, ultimately, it is up to individuals to determine how they use technology and to make informed choices. So they've given their input, their final opinion here. Fantastic. Wonderful. Anything else to add here, Claudia? What do you think?
Yeah, I just think that they've used that uncommon vocabulary that's mentioned in the band descriptors. And I'm not talking about the really good vocabulary that they've used, like mitigate. I'm talking about with just a few clicks, for example. That is topic specific vocabulary. That phrase, just a few clicks, we could only use that to talk about technology. And that's that uncommon language that's mentioned. So yeah, I mean, they've done an excellent job. Like you say, we don't want to show them this too much just because it can be a little bit discouraging for them, or they can just take mitigate and go, okay, I'm taking that, I want to use that. And if they haven't practiced, making sentences and using it in context and actually using it in their everyday life, it's going to sound unnatural. But yeah, this is an excellent example of a band 9.
I would say so, for sure. Yeah, great. Yeah, so good advice there. We don't want to discourage students. We don't want them to feel like their work isn't good enough or that they can never achieve this, because again, why would I be giving them band 9 samples if I'm only aiming for a band 6 or 7? Like, I don't need to do this. And it's just, again, a lot of teachers make this mistake, and understandably, but it's not necessarily what we need. So that's just something to bear in mind. But we just wanted to show you what a band 7 looks like and what a band 9 looks like, so you can see those differences. And they're not that radical, actually, but it's just these little things that make a huge difference. Okay.
And to be honest, not many students need a band 9 in writing, like
no
for
one does.
visa, and even for the academic. I haven't had a student come to me and say, I need a band 9.
I've only met one student who needed it for their own personal satisfaction.
Yeah.
And I told them it's pretty difficult to achieve, and they got an 8 and they were happy with that. But it's difficult, even for native speakers. Like, it's very tricky.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take your questions now. So if you have any questions, just feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll do our best to respond to them. So another question here from Stacey. So what's required for them to get into university?
Yeah, so that depends on the university and where they're going. For example, I had a student who was moving to Italy. And so it wasn't that Italy required IELTS, but that specific university did. It was like in the top 5 universities or something like that. And for him, he needed a 5.5 for speaking, so not really high. And then he needed like a 7 for writing. So this will depend on the university and on the country as well.
Yeah. I work with a lot of students who are going to Canada usually, or the US, and generally at a bachelor's level, or in the UK as well, sorry. Generally for bachelor's, they need a 6, is usually enough. If they're doing masters or PhDs, they might need a 7. But generally we're working with, the vast majority is 6s or 7s. Also, I work with a lot of students who are trying to obtain a visa to move to a new country. And again, I can speak about Canada. Like, the system there is a points-based system. So they will assign points based on, your English level. So the higher you can get, the better. But it maxes out at about a 7.5 overall. So again, if you can get a 7 overall, and that's fantastic. So that's something to think about as well. Hope that answers the question. Stacey, what's the audience that you might be working with, or the group that you might be working with? Let us know, and we'll try.
Sorry, I'm in the car. No,
okay.
I'm kind of just starting out with this, and I'm really interested in being able to do it. So I'm in the United States.
Okay.
So I'm not really sure. I'm thinking more like students wanting to come over and go to college here, which is why I asked that question.
Yeah, it would mainly be, they would mainly need a 6 or a 7, from what I understand. So yeah, that's how most universities would do that. So yeah, 6 or 7 most of the time. Yeah, perfect. Catherine, did you have any questions? Or Liz, did you have any questions that came up?
I did not have any questions. No.
No problem.
Thank you.
What's something you maybe learned, or something you thought was a little bit confusing maybe, or something that didn't quite make sense? Maybe we can explain it more for you, but if everything's good, that's okay. No pressure at all.
Yeah, no, everything was good. I enjoyed the writing piece of it.
Yes. Yeah, it's something that is overcomplicated a lot and made necessary, like much more difficult than it needs to be. And 250 words is like, ooh, a lot, but actually it's, it's 12, I mean, as little as 12 sentences, 11, 12 sentences, if you structure it correctly. It's just about structuring it in the right way. And 50% of it is, can I answer the question? Can I structure it clearly? That's half of it. Get that right, then they're well on their way to be successful. It's just, can I use the right words and can I structure it correctly? That's what's really important. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Daniel, where can I get a copy of the rubric that's used for the scoring?
Yes, there are some public ones available. Are you a member of our course, Stacey?
Can you just repeat that? I'm in the car and you cut out.
I said, are you a member of our course? Are you a member of our program?
I'm not. I didn't sign up for the paid program, but I get I get all your emails.
Yeah.
So yes.
What I can do is I'll drop in there's a public version. It's not as detailed, but
Okay.
You can find it online, so I'll just quickly, I know you're in the car, so it's probably not ideal,
Yeah.
but what I'll do is I'll just send you a link to it, and then you can take a look at it a little bit later when you have time.
Perfect.
So yeah.
Thank you.
One more thing to note as well, that's quite important, is a lot of people get hung up on academic in general, like, oh, it's really radically different. It isn't actually, it's just that the question type for task 1 is a little bit different, so that's it. So yeah, I'll send that over to you now, Stacey, in the chat. So if you just click that and refer to that when you need it, that will help you out.
Yeah, that's a good point, Daniel, about general and academic.
Mhm.
A lot of people think that task 2 is different, but no, it's pretty
It
much the
is.
same. It's just the nature of the questions are a little bit different.
Exactly. So yeah, that's really all there is to say about that one. So yes, that's important. Okay, great. If we don't have any other questions, then I guess we can wrap up. We'll send out the recording if you want to review this a little bit later. Hopefully it recorded okay, knock on wood. But yeah, that's great. All right, and if you have any questions, just ask us in the group, and we'll see you next week for another session. All right, thank you so much. Have a
Thanks,
good-
guys. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.